In the last Friday, we saw the public release of the May 2019 study articles, 3 articles on child sex abuse. And on Monday, the governing body authorized a full revision to the still secret Elders Manual, the full chapter on child sex abuse. Will that change anything?
Well, there are certain policies and practices that the Watchtower have stuck with all these years and have stated categorically that they are not going to change because they state that this is part of their religious beliefs. So, interestingly, the Watchtower, of the May edition of the Watchtower, they have addressed these very same things when they apparently felt for years that going to the authorities and reporting child abuse is spoils the reputation of their religion and brings reproach upon God. They've changed their tune on that. They've changed their mind on that. And they now say in this Watchtower that it really, if anything, it is the reputation of the abuser that is at stake. That the victim, it does not bring any reproach on herself, himself, or the religion. And they also have modified their stance on the statement that there needs to be 2 witnesses in a matter of wrongdoing, which is scriptural, Deuteronomy, the 19th chapter. Of course, to do with wrongdoing, it has to be 2 witnesses, and they quote also from Matthew, the 18th chapter, where it just about says the same thing in the 16th verse, I believe it is. So that they're addressing that differently. It used to be if a child abuse victim would go to the elder or elders and accuse one of Job's witnesses for child abuse, molestation, rape, that the claimant had to bring forth another witness. So the victim is counted as one witness and they would have to have another witness. Well, that's impossible in these cases, that to provide a witness to your rape or your molestation. So in that case, there's then no acceptance of the accusation, and if the accused denies it, which ordinarily they did, then the victim was dissuaded or discouraged from going to the authorities. And this is 50 years of this in this organization. It was in the 1960s when this organization instructed that if there is wrongdoing in a congregation, you take that wrongdoing committed by another member to the elders. And so for all these years, you had to provide another witness to wrongdoing. And if you couldn't, you got no satisfaction. And then you were discouraged because if you went to the authorities or the police about this, you were told you are spoiling our reputation. And so there was no satisfaction on the part of the victims, and it was becoming a huge problem. There are people, young people, who were molested when they were children, and then they were young adults, and they were committing suicide and are committing suicide. Their lives are a mess, and so there's been such a public outcry due to the coverage of the media about this application from the Bible about the 2 witnesses and using it in a literal way by saying you cannot go to the authorities, or perhaps if some elders said you can't go, some others would say if you do go, you'll be disfellowshipped. This is an actual occurrence in this organization. So the outcry on the internet has been great from all over the world on this. Secular press has featured this two-witness rule and how ridiculous it is, as if God would, in a time of crime, protect a criminal because there was not another witness. It doesn't make any sense. So in this May issue of the Watchtower, they have addressed this. And they said in the congregation, this is to be used in a spiritual sense. It has nothing to do with the authorities, that the victim can go free to go to the authorities or the parents. I mean, I know a victim when she was 5 years old when she was raped, and her father, an elder, was told he would be disfellowshipped if he would go to the authorities. This is refreshing that they're addressing this now by saying it's a spiritual application, and that in the congregation, if there is an accusation against your spiritual brother or sister, then you take it to the elders, and they determine whether the wrongdoing was so egregious that this individual should be disfellowshipped or put out from the congregation. So they make plain in the article that this has nothing to do with the secular authorities in the case of crime. So that is marvelous. But it took all these years, and this is exactly what I said on Dateline, that this is a crime. Don't treat it as a sin. And now, all of the, since 1991, how many more children were abused because they didn't address this correctly, and the perpetrators were not reported to the police. The Awake editor, in a written letter, told me, and the letter came to me in 1997, which was the basis for my leaving the organization, because he said, now that we don't appoint known molesters to a position of oversight in the congregations, he assumed we wouldn't have any more of this, the abuse of children. But then he said, now we won't have any more megabuck lawsuits. Well, I didn't know that they had megabuck lawsuits before 1997. He never told me that they had been sued. Well, if I had been making any decisions on important matters like that, I would have done something about it so I wouldn't have been sued again, but they did nothing. And so all the way to 1997, they didn't change the policy, and they kept putting molesters in who were supposedly repentant. So he added into his letter, and he said, but who here at headquarters will bear the responsibility for the past 5 years when we started to try to change these policies? Who here is responsible for more Jehovah's Witnesses children being molested by Jehovah's Witnesses molesters?